this is the nation. Cornell West should run as a Democrat. And needless to say, and I got to say, everybody, Nick, Anthony, Colin, it puts a smile on my face that they are getting ratioed to oblivion by so many people here. It is just a beautiful thing to see. Have any of you seen this, or have you been one of the people that have been,
I'm gonna show you this
ratio them? Go ahead, Nick.
Since you mentioned it, I don't know if this guy wrote the article, but he's editor of the Nation.
Yeah, he's one of the writers too. Yes, DD, I think his name.
And they follow me for whatever fuck reason, right? What's it? Easily ratio, not even trying. Easily, not even trying here. Ratio, because I asked this a very basic question that destroys the entire premise of the article. Why should he run in a rigged primary? And I think their attempts to get Dr. Cornel West to run as a Democrat serves multiple purposes. You guys want to know one of the most malicious and devious purposes it serves? Their job is to do what? It's to give the illusion that change is possible within the Democratic Party. So their job is not to learn from mistakes. So they're telling Dr. Cornel West to run in the Democratic Party because they were trying to overwrite history and trying to make you guys forget about the fact that the primaries are rigged. Yeah, we just saw the Democrats rig the primary from Bernie Sanders, but they want the left to be dumb and inefficient. Remember, CJ? They want a dumb left that has a memory of a goldfish, that doesn't learn from lessons, and to continue to march the direction to the PMCs. That's exactly what this is about. But I'll put your screen back up because I'll just show you guys the easy ratio you get from calling people out. Asking a basic question. Why should he run in a primary that's fucking rigged? Doesn't make sense, but go ahead, panel.
Colin, Anthony, any thoughts? Have you responded to this thread in particular? And if you did, let us know what you said. But any thoughts beyond that?
I seen it. I didn't respond to it, but of course we know. Well, you know what? I'll give the Nation some credit. At least it seems like it's somewhat more favorable, slightly more favorable coverage compared to what Marianne Williamson has been getting, and even RFK right now. But yeah, it's just another way, as Nick said, to just kind of, it's just buying on people being extremely forgetful or more likely fearful. I think that's more accurate in terms of we got to protect people from the boogeyman that is the Democratic Party / Trump or whoever ends up being winning the primary, that they're going to use this as a foil just to kind of not have the idea of even speaking in terms of having an alternate party outside of duopoly ever happen. So, so it's the idea. Yeah, so I think that's mostly it because, Cornell Dr. West has the name, he has the popularity, and at least even if people will not necessarily vote for him, he has enough star power that at least people will kind of be like, huh, interesting. Why is Cornell doing this? Why is he willing to campaign outside of the Democratic or Republican Party? Let me look into this anymore. So it's just a way for the mainstream media to kind of, try to shift the conversation back to their favor in terms of having people just be so embedded and not thinking critically in terms of even just thinking about the possibility of doing something alternative of what we've been doing forever. So it's just, and I've talked to many people about this, and again, it's a lot of theory that they like the idea of what Dr. West is doing. But in practice, they're just, when it comes to them actually doing it, it's just kind of like, I don't know if that's such a good idea because, and again, they kind of bring in the fear aspect. Right. It's to bring in the fear aspect of we have to do that. I don't particularly like the Democrats, but we don't have a choice, like even though if they suck, but the Republicans are way worse. So it's just a lot of fear-based rhetoric. And
look at this quote here, because I didn't actually read the article yet. This is hilarious. Big shout out to Do Dissidents, our brothers at the Post Duopoly's Left show. That will be back next Monday, I believe.
Yes.
Do Dissidents says, acting as a spoiler. This is from the article. To back up what Colin is saying, it's actually worse because this is from the article. Holy shit! Acting as a spoiler in a close race is the closest a third-party candidate can come to relevancy. You see, no conversation about movement building. But anyway, let's continue. And if Donald Trump remains in serious contention next year, that's a risk no progressive can dismiss. This is the PMC left, guys. So Do Distance says, so really, this article endorses Biden for re-election. It's literally a pro-Democrat article.
Right.
Unbelievable.
The whole argument of saying you should run as a Democrat, just think about the logic. These people have degrees, and I like to point out their degrees when they make these stupid arguments, because you're pointing out your education didn't teach you much. That's the joke I'm trying to point out, because you know that this is rigged. This is rigged. Whatever, if you don't want to use the language rigged, you know it's heavily favored for the incumbent. So you say, hey, guy who's great candidate, come run over here in this race. We already know who's going to win. What are you really saying? You're saying we need your candidacy to end at a certain point and Joe Biden to pick up, because that's eventually the end game. Go ahead.
They want legitimacy in terms of having Dr. West go in the Democrat. But that's really all it is they want another person to go for the Democratic Party, so when they fail, that it's another person, Dr. West, who has, I would say, not sure how much of the Black contingent he has, but he's popular. But him being able to say, to give the endorsement of, oh, we need to vote for Joe Biden, that's what they're looking for, So go ahead.
Look at the term relevancy. What does that even mean? He said the closest a third-party candidate can come to relevancy. So what does being relevant mean to you? Because the DNC said they are not having debates, right? And also, who's more relevant in October? The Democrat candidate that dropped out of the race, or the third-party candidate that's still actually in the narrative, that's part of the conversation, that's actually running for president?
And that is the ridiculousness.
You're giving up. You're giving up before Super Tuesday. I'm telling you guys, they're going to give up around Super Tuesday, and they think they're more relevant? And what does this mean in their mindset? So what does relevant mean? Being relevant means being a pawn of the Democratic Party. Right. You're not relevant unless you're part of the effort to defeat Donald Trump. So if you run in the Democratic primary, no matter if you lose in embarrassing fashion, if you're part of the coalition to defeat Trump, you're relevant. Really revealing this part of the article. Go ahead.
They're basically trying to act like the wedding dress rehearsal is the more important thing than showing up at the wedding. Essentially what they're saying, like the primary, you're more relevant when you're going against Democrats, when you're going against the general election. It's a preposterous, illogical argument. But go ahead, Anthony. You were going to chime in.
Yeah, go ahead, Zenkus.
Everything you guys said, and Sabby's got it right. I think I chimed in and said basically the same thing. The article literally said you need to stand on the debate stage, and challenge and defend your position. They're not letting people on it. There's no debate stage. They're not having debates. So listen, they don't know what to do with Cornel West. It's not. I have a lot of respect for Jill Stein, and I always get his first name
Ajamu Baraka.
Thank you, Mr. Baraka. Ajamu Baraka, who's just also brilliant. They didn't have the name recognition before, and when Jill Stein got the name recognition, not her fault, it was as like, you're the reason Trump became president, as if she's, powerful. Cornel West has been on every major cable news network. He's authored books, written the forward to critical race theory, but he's also the only candidate. Maybe Bernie did, I don't know, but the only candidate that I know in my lifetime who's like literally gotten arrested back in the 80s protesting South African apartheid. I mean, this guy
got arrested for Ferguson too. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean, all the way up until Ferguson, he's been arrested multiple times. He walks the walk. They don't know what to do with him because they do like him, or they like having him on. His perspective is consistent with the virtue signaling of the Democrats, which is we care about Black lives. As Nick so eloquently pointed out before, they do not care about Black lives. Let me just say this. If you agree, and you, I don't know if you can still hear me. If you agree and are in sync with U.S. foreign policy, you are in sync with white supremacy, because our foreign policy is white supremacist foreign policy. There's no doubt about it. We love to bomb brown and Black people. They don't know what to do with Cornel West. The nation is freaking out because they're supposed to be one of the vanguards of real leftism. There were times when they were. They are not that now. Joan Walsh is not that. They're all establishment shills, and they don't want to outwardly criticize West for his points, his policy points, because they can't. There's no defense for what they're doing and what he's criticizing in the duopoly, specifically, between Democrats and Republicans. For decades and decades, inequality has gone up, civil rights have gone down. The environment has gotten worse. Like every metric you can look at, because of Democrat-Republican two-party duopoly control, has gotten worse. He's naming the monster, and they don't like it. But they can't outwardly attack him and say he's a bad person, although some people on Twitter do. So they're like, you should run as a Democrat. Mm-hmm. They want to silence him and his supporters. I have seen, I think he's had I saw two at-length interviews on your network, CJ and Nick, which were excellent with Dr. West, and a bunch of other interviews. He's not backing down. They are freaking out. They don't know what to do. And I want somebody who says the crazy thoughts that I have when I hear somebody way smarter than me say it. I'm like, I'm not alone here. I get it. They get it. He also made an important point. Why now? And his answer was, we don't have the time to wait. Do people realize what's happening with the environment? Do people realize what's happening? Life expectancy in the U.S. went down. We're on the brink of World War III. Climate catastrophes around the corner. We don't have the time for more broken promises. He said it. And he said, if I don't make it all the way, I will go down fighting. We will go down fighting. I think this candidacy is transformational. I said it last time we talked about it. It will be interesting to see how they move forward. They cannot completely ignore him, because the look won't be good for those virtue signaling people who put up the BLM banners on their profile, right? They can't, so they don't know what to do. So they want to wedge him into the Democratic Party. He's not going to do it because he's not an idiot. I'm sure.
They're begging him to. They're begging him to.
Like, my last thing with that, I'm sure Dr. West, who's a very deliberate, he's a philosopher. I'm sure he thought all of this out before coming out with a public decision. I trust him.
But he's built up a track record where I think he's going to be able to sustain a lot of the attacks, and they're just not going to land because he hasn't been in politics, and because he can be seen on all of their networks, them bringing him on, from Anderson Cooper to Cuomo to, I remember Don Lemon had him on. Everybody would bring on Cornel West. But let me read Sabby's tweet. The outlet has become just another DNC shield, and she's right. What debate stage? The DNC already said there will be no primary debates. Dr. West has already had corporate media coverage. Stop lying. This argument that you're going to be irrelevant, Marianne Williamson too. If you're really, because they're talking about Cornel West and they're way more fearful of Cornel West than any of the candidates. I'm not going to say any. They're fearful of Robert F.K. Jr. also, but they act like Cornel West has not been getting the coverage. You're writing about him, the nation. You're writing about him yourself. What are you talking about? It's just the critique falls flat. And there was another one I wanted to show, a couple of other ones I wanted to show. What stupid, horrible advice. The DNC has admitted the primaries are a fraud. Why the fuck would West do this knowing full well he will, one, never get the nomination, and two, would be expected to give fealty to the selected corporate candidate, basically meaning he will be forced to have to endorse him. And that is another great point. And I do want to bring up the article just so we can read a couple of paragraphs, because it's pretty terrible, Nick. And I'm sure you probably go back later and read some of it, because we're not going to read all of it right here. But it's pretty terrible. Let me scroll all the way up so you can see the graphic and the title. Cornel West should run as a Democrat. And then the subtitle, if he wants to go beyond preaching to the converted, he needs to take his socialist politics into the Democratic primary. And this is written by, and that's the guy you saw, Nick, the D.D. Gettenplan. He is the editor. And then I always say his name right, but this is the guy from Bernie Sanders. He's also the founding editor of Jacobin, which is not surprising. He's the founding editor of Jacobin, and they've come out with a lot of the same sort of headlines. I think one of their bad headlines was "Don't run" or something like that, or Cornel West has no business running. That's from Jacobin, the guy who also founded that founding editor. He also wrote this. Now, let me go down to a couple of things they say here, and I'll get everybody's reaction. And it's, hang on one second, down here. There goes the pop-up starting. So is the pop-up going away? There we go. So let's read here. This is how they describe him. Instead of taking his bat and ball and retreating, I'm sorry, let me back up to give context to that last line there. I'll start here. There is, however, an available arena where West could still provide useful pressure by laying out the left alternative to Bidenism, the Democratic primaries. On a debate stage, at campaign rallies, and in national media coverage, West, with his prophetic voice and moral clarity, like Sanders in 2016 and 2020, could accomplish a great deal. And I think they're falling short of being specific about what accomplishments. It's just kind of talking. That's what the professional managerial class has now set up, sort of a goalpost. As long as you got your narrative in, you got to say some stuff. That's all they want. Go ahead, Colin, if you want.
No, that's exactly it. It's just, we want you there to talk about the issues, but we'll be damned to actually. That's exactly what Crystal Ball was saying in regards to Marianne and some of these other channels. It's like, oh, it's important that even though she won't win, it's important that she's there to talk about these socialist / progressive values, to kind of fill in that void within the establishment. Like, it means nothing if they're not going to follow through on any of it. And they know that's not going to happen. So just talk. And again, we've gone through this with Bernie for the past 8 years. We've gone past the situation of just talking. We need action at this point. And so it's just, again, kind of going off the idea of people having brains of flies and not remembering how they did Bernie dirty in the last 2 elections, and thinking like, oh, we can try to do the same thing with West and have it be different this time.
Yeah. And I'll continue with the article. Let me know. I can't see you, so you guys interrupt me whenever you want to chime in. Instead of taking his bat and ball and retreating to the margins, that's how they describe running as a Green Party
Right.
candidate. Instead of taking his bat and ball and retreating to the margins, we believe West should seek out the truly national stage, that running as a Democrat would bring.
No debates, though. No debates.
Good Lord. Good Lord. And they don't acknowledge that at all, that the Democratic Party, in this article, they don't acknowledge that. Instead of letting RFK
Isn't that a lie
Jr.
by omission? Aren't they lying to their audience by omission?
Mhm.
By omitting that?
That is a great point.
Go ahead, CJ.
Instead of letting RFK Jr. leverage his family name and his following as an anti-vax crusader,
You gotta see that's
into
his title. That's his title. Like you want him to run in the war criminal capitalist Democratic Party. Like that's the title that you support. Anyway, sorry, go ahead, CJ.
West should mount a real one, offering the radical solutions he's always championing, including on war and peace, and which we believe this country desperately needs. Such a campaign would be good for the country and for the
Where's the
Democratic
evidence
Party.
of that? Oh, sorry, CJ, but what's the evidence?
There is none.
You gotta see
There
how
is
this is just an evidence-free article. This is a vibes. Oh, this is an article written just on vibes. No evidence of that because we had two Bernie campaigns. The largest progressive campaigns that we ever seen. And the Democratic Party as far right as they ever been. So what's the evidence of your statement here? That such a campaign be good for a country? I will argue that those campaigns are not good for the country because she hurts people into these corrupt, evil parties like the Democrats. So let's continue.
Listen to this line. Running as a Democrat would transform West's candidacy. This is what it is now. This is what they're from a sterile exercise into a vehicle for redeeming our politics from the corporate complacency and soul-crushing cynicism about Democratic politics that serve only those already in power. That sounds like a bunch of college degree mumbo jumbo that says nothing. Go ahead.
No, exactly what I said earlier. This is like the theoretical aspect of doing politics in this way versus like the practical aspect of it. So it's like they're all for the theoretical if they don't have to do anything. So, and the thing is, and Anthony, you probably know this well, like the idea of theory is that it has to be tested. So let's see how far that Cornell West can go in terms of running for the Green Party. Now, if that fails, that you can make that argument. But they're going in with the idea of, oh, this can't work because he's doing this on the theoretical side in terms of, I like the idea of having, alternate parties, but in practice, that's not going to work. Or at least in practice, it's not going to work right now. The argument that I make is that most voters at this point are independent. So if you're going to try and do this experiment, I don't even want to call it an experiment, but for the sake of them, let's call it an experiment. Shouldn't people who are independent have a voice within the duopoly that we can work to make it a viable thing? Yeah, the idea of Cornel West being president is not going to be a likely thing, but at least the idea can start growing in terms of how feasible it is. Can it be for an alternate party that is apart from the establishment, can actually force, both parties to actually do something, or better, to actually bring a more a party that is actually tied to labor to arise in the coming years. That's the kind of work that we should be doing right now. So to me, it's the idea of the environment is right for it and ready for it. So it's a question of people who are willing to put in the work. And as you were saying before, CJ, it's just the idea of people, they're just lazy. A lot of these PMCs are just wanting to sit back behind their degrees, or in our case, behind their computer screens and behind their desks to talk to us about, no, this is the way, it cannot work this way because of X, Y, and Z, versus trying to get out on the streets or going in labor and actually trying to figure out what are the means that we need to start doing, what should we be doing right now to make an alternate party viable. if they did this as far as this article, that would be one thing. But instead, it's like, oh, this can't work because it's not done in the normal way that we're kind of used to. So we're going to smear, but not smear Dr. West because he's doing something that's allegedly an experiment versus actually trying to see what can be viable in terms of thinking in the future of what will possibly work to have people come out of the duopoly at this point.
I want to highlight this part here, and I'll pass it to you, CJ. Running as a Democrat will transform West's candidate from a sterile exercise into a vehicle for redeeming our politics from corporate complacency. And check this: soul-crushing cynicism. Who the biggest cynic? Who the biggest cynic in politics right now? It's these people.
Yes.
These are the people that say we have no power. We must kneel to the war criminal imperialist Democratic Party. The biggest cynic there is are these people. The biggest nihilists are these people. But he's criticizing the Democratic Party for having soul-crushing, cynical politics, but he's perpetuating that. Remember what I told you guys? Who's the biggest obstacle to third parties? You think it's Nancy Pelosi? You think it's Chuck Schumer? You think it's one of the most unpopular politicians? You think Nancy Pelosi's charisma is stopping a third party? No. The biggest obstacle are these people who have audiences that's on the verge, that's on the edge of transitioning out of the two-party duopoly. And right when they start thinking like, man, I really think this two-party duopoly is bullshit. Joe Biden don't got my best interest at heart. Maybe we should have a third-party campaign. Right when they about to flip, some PMC fuck comes out and say, no, they're not a good idea. And once again, they're not as educated as we are. They're not as radical as we are. So they trust them. So right as they about to flip and start to support third parties, they read this article from The Nation. They hear Crystal Ball tell him to grow up. And he's like, maybe I should grow up, man. I thought I was about to support third parties, but Crystal Ball told me to grow up, so I can't do it no more. And that's what happened. They're the biggest obstacle towards third parties are these people.
They are.
Go ahead, CJ,
and that's to your point. I'll bring up my tweet in a second, but I made this point, a similar point, that these are the white moderates that some black radicals have referred to as white moderates, and we have to update it. I would change the word from moderate and liberal to progressive, and eliminate white, because now it's just everybody. It's the PMC. Right. It's the PMC progressive that is now playing that role. And what I want to zero in, Nick, you zeroed in on the sentence right before this one, and I didn't get to finish earlier. In short, so all of what they say here, running as a Democrat would transform West's candidacy from sterile exercise into a vehicle for redeeming our politics from the corporate complacency and soul-crushing cynicism about Democratic politics. In short, they mean it would be the act of a serious man. Essentially, he's not serious running as a third-party candidate. I mean, to me, this is great, because these people, when I'm saying the professional managerial left, they've been all this time when we didn't have a good candidate, Nick and Colin and Anthony, when we didn't have a good candidate, when our best candidate was like the Minnesota governor, I forget his name, the Minnesota governor, when that was like the best of our hope. There was always, if we just had a candidate, if we just had a candidate, we would all for it. Remember Kyle Kalinske? Yep. He never added this other caveat. Well, we have passed the post voting now. This is new. Because
remember when Dr. Cornell West, sorry, CJ, to interrupt.
No, go ahead if you want to interject.
Remember when he was running as a People's Party candidate? And it was like, if only he ran as a Green, because they didn't think it was going to happen. We got the inside scoop, and we was just cracking up the whole time while they were saying this shit. Like, he ran as a Green Party. Now he ran as a Green Party candidate. Now they were forced to show their hands. But sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Anthony. I think Anthony was going to chime in. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. How dare you, nation? How dare you suggest that one of the most consistent, educated, radical voices for racial and economic justice of our lifetimes could ever not be considered a serious man? How dare you, nation? Who's that journalist? What a piece of living garbage.
He's the editor. He's the editor of
He's
the Nation right now.
And like, so like they'll never go on RBN. I would debate that idiot. How dare you? And I don't know their racial, ethnic identity or anything, but they're propping up white supremacy with this article.
Yes.
Look, I'm white. I walk in this white body. I know what I got. I know my privilege, and I know people are suffering. And and it's not just about race, but we have somebody who can literally articulate in the most, my God, poetic way Cornell West speaks. And it's, he talks about jazz. I love when he talks about music, but he's so educated, but he speaks in a way anybody can listen. And if you have a heart and a brain, it resonates. Why would there be deep-rooted cynicism, whoever you are that wrote this stupid article, opinion piece? I wonder why there's deep-rooted cynicism. Could it be the Democrats literally decided to leave the minimum wage at $7.25 an hour during record inflation? Could that be why people are cynical? Could it be that Joe Biden promised a public option, which I think is inadequate, but would be better than not having it? Could that be why people are cynical? Because he's never brought it up once since he was nominated. Could it be that we're cynical because police keep assassinating and murdering Black and brown bodies and nothing is done about it? Could that be why we're cynical? We're on the brink of World War III. Would you like to go down the list? Twice in the past month, I live in New York, we had breathing air quality alerts because of the Canadian wildfires. Our climate is fucked up. Why are people cynical? They're afraid. Cornel West, and look, I don't do hero worship. I'm sure there's going to be a couple of things he says that I'm like, I don't know if I would have said it that way, or I don't agree. And that's fine. Nobody, unless you're brain dead, is going to agree with every single thing somebody says. But Cornel West articulates exactly why he's running third party. The duopoly not only has failed, not only are the Democrats a useless opposition, in name only, they are in opposition to the Republicans. See, listen, I get shit all the time on my profile. I don't really care because it's Twitter. But I get shit all the time on my profile. Like, why don't you ever call out the Republicans?
Yeah.
My whole thing is this. I hate the Republicans. I don't hate people that vote Republican. I know people who do. And we end up agreeing, like, on Medicare for all. I'm like, just be independent, right? Vote green. But the party is disgusting. But we need a true opposition to the Republican Party. Democrats have shown they are not willing to be in opposition. Oh, the parliamentarians said we couldn't have a minimum wage increase. Are you fucking kidding me? People are literally making the choice between like putting gas in their car, putting groceries on their table, or getting evicted. And the Democrats couldn't even push through a vote. Pelosi wouldn't allow it on the eviction moratorium because they knew it would fail because Democrats take money from the real estate industry. This is an existential threat to people's lives. Why are we cynical? Democrats are not, and this is what Cornel West is articulating, they're not a serious, there's that Nick word, they are not a serious opposition to the Republican Party. And what do both parties, especially the Republicans, stand for? Is it fascism? It's fascist, Christo-authoritarian capitalism and imperialism and colonialism. That's what both parties stand for. The Republicans are more open about it, right? So we don't have time. West is literally saying we've got to have this conversation now. And by the way, I am just going to throw this out. Cornel West absolutely could win the presidency. I'll make a prediction here. Who cares? I'm nobody with whatever it comes to like politics. But the bottom line is, I don't think Joe Biden is going to be the nominee. I can see a scenario. Joe Biden is not well. Joe Biden is cognitively unwell. And it affects when you understand what dementia, he has dementia. I'm not diagnosing. I get these letters written like, you don't have any right to diagnose. I'm not a doctor. I know I've witnessed, I'm a social worker. I witnessed people with dementia, early, middle, and late stage. Joe Biden has dementia. It's undoubtable to me. He's not, I don't believe he'll be the nominee. I don't. I think they need a plan B and they don't know what to do. It can't be Kamala.
Right. That's the reason why they don't know what to do. Newsom is the person that the establishment and the people with money want to go after and have him. That's the reason why he's out campaigning now so vigorously. But go ahead.
Just to throw this out, what you just said, CJ Newsom, if Biden, and by the way, I don't wish him ill. He's a human being. I wish he would just retire because, like, enjoy your life, right? Whatever you have left of it. But the point is, can you imagine if Biden can't for physical reasons, right? Because he's 80 years old. The actuarial tables are pretty clear. At that age, the likelihood that he could have a serious issue that could sideline his ability to do his job or get higher every year. Can you imagine if they tried to push Newsom on us while Cornell West was in the race for Greens? My God. So my point is, it's anybody's game. Like, how many points? What did Clinton get when he ran in 92 and won? Because Ross Perot was third party. Clinton didn't. He got a plurality, but he didn't get a majority. He got like 40-something% of the vote.
A high 40, yeah, I remember. I don't know what it was, but
might have been 42. You know, but the point is, but it doesn't matter. And I just want to end with, like, it doesn't matter if he doesn't win. I'm just saying nobody can predict what's going to happen. Nobody thought Trump. I thought he had a shot. Nobody thought Trump was going to win. But this candidacy is important. We cannot wait to call and name the problem. I said this in the beginning with trans and queer rights, all our problems, all our grievances are connected. Cornel West is the only candidate that articulates that.
Absolutely. Let me read these last two and we can close this segment. And then, Nick, if you want to prepare your main story, this is one of the stories we're going to have, but you called it your main story, so you know what I'm talking about. You want to prepare that? We can do that next. Let me read this part because it encompasses the headline or what we talked about earlier. He announced his campaign as a nominee for the tiny scandal-plagued People's Party, which has ballot access in only Florida.
The Democratic Party is not scandal-plagued.
Yes.
The Democratic Party is scandal-free. Scandal-free, pristine democracy at the Democratic Party. Go ahead.
Then he moved his candidacy to the Green, but the Greens, who seem to have welcomed West with open arms, aren't much of an improvement with ballot access in only 15 states. Now, here's where they're lying. Because they know damn well that what the Greens does is that they have like a certain set that they never go under, because the threshold to get on the ballot is literally real low. So it's always you start out 18, but they know damn well that the Green Party will be on 40 some odd state ballots. Right. They know that. But they're trying to act like it's not that much better. But let me finish. Though the party does have a long history in Europe, the U.S. Green Party reached its peak in 2000 when Nader won almost 3 million votes for president and has been blamed by mainstream pundits ever since for the failure of Al Gore's dismal campaign. The reason for West's choice is clear. In our hardly democratic two-party system, acting as a spoiler in a close race is the closest a third-party candidate can come to relevancy. And if Donald Trump remains the serious contention next year, that is a risk no progressive can dismiss. This is vote blue no matter who. I don't know how this is vote blue no matter who, but let me say this part, and I'll pass it to you, Nick, for any final words. Anybody else that want to comment on this. What I was gonna say. The third party candidacy and running. I forgot what I was gonna say. So I'll go to you, Nick, and then see if I jog my memory here.
But that article was just a Vote Blue ad, and all these people who was pretending to be radical during the first Trump presidency term, and during the Joe Biden first 2 years, during Bernie Sanders, we're gonna watch them revert to their true core role, and they're gonna be exposed, and they're gonna have no choice. That's why the whole Cornell West situation is interesting, because we saw someone who gave them a head fake and almost played 3D chess in a way, where he forced them to show their hand first, where he announced as a People Party candidate. That actually was a brilliant move in terms of coverage, right? Because now everyone was forced to say, oh man, if only if he wasn't a People's Party candidate. Now he revealed that he's a Green Party candidate. Now people are forced to reveal their hand, that their number one concern is to make sure Democrats don't lose. That is not the voice of the proletariat. He mentioned how the mainstream pundits was criticizing the third party candidate for costing the Democrats the election. Why are you concerned about the opinions of a mainstream pundit instead of the proletariat? Like, that article is full of tales. Article full of tales. Who opinions you value most? What club you want to be a part in? It's very obvious. That article is not speaking to us. I want us at RBN to realize who are these PMCs speaking to, and it's not us at all. And I have two quick stories, but go ahead, CJ, and we ain't calling.
Let me add this part. I did remember what I was going to say now. And that is, this Trump is bad. That's no longer an effective selling point, and that's what they think they're going to do. Well, you're going to elect Trump. Do you think you're going to siphon votes away to elect Trump? And my answer would be, and what is your point? Like, right. What is the point? Because it is still this sort of narrative they're trying to play, that everybody is about stopping Trump. And I'm just saying, that's not my top goal. That's not my priority. Stopping Trump is no more important than stopping Biden to me. It's the same task. So that is no longer a selling point, because we've lived through a Trump presidency. We've lived through a Joe Biden presidency. Joe Biden presidency is unequivocally worse. It is a worse presidency. Listen, the story Nick is about to do, the cluster munitions right there, moving us to a nuclear war right there. Forget the inflation. Forget the increased military budget. Forget marching us to war with China and Russia at the same time. Forget all of that. Forget the censorship. Just on marching us to nuclear war, just that alone makes Donald Trump the lesser of the two evils. And I'm not saying that to say I'm going to vote for him. I'm going all the way in. Green Party voting again, of course, with Cornel West. But this is no longer a selling point. And that's my final words on this topic.
Colin, any last thoughts before I move on?
Yeah, real quick. Trump would not be an issue if the Democrats did what they were supposed to do. Mm-hmm. Point blank, period.
Absolutely.
And the bar was low. So you didn't give people a $15 minimum wage. You somehow allowed the child tax credit to go to tank that. You fucked up on regards to student loan forgiveness. There wasn't a lot that people were asking for. People were basically asking for competency. And if you were able to do at minimum maybe at least one of those things, Trump will not be an issue right now. But Trump is an issue right now because you can only blame the Democrats for that. And these are the same people who are going to ask you, we know like what they didn't do, but we need to vote for the Democrats again because Trump. And as you said, CJ, and I think especially for most of us who are Black, it really doesn't matter who's going to be president, and I know you said this, Nick, like, we're not, especially when you're thinking on local level, like, the federal government doesn't scare us, but the cops do. The fact that we're not having enough money scares us, most people probably more than anything else. So it doesn't matter who president is, especially within the duopoly. We're fucked regardless. So it scares the PMCs because it will actually force them to be accountable somewhat of, oh, we have this bastard in government now, so we got to do whatever we can to stop it. Like, as I say, everyone becomes Malcolm X when the Republican is in office, but you don't hold the same accountability. You don't hold that same type of weight when your own is in office. And so, as you kind of say all the time, it's the idea of consistency. If you're going to have that same heat for Trump, rightly so, then you should have the same heat for the Democrats. And I don't see that. So,
no, they cheerlead them in articles. They write in articles to get you to support them. That's what that article is.
Right. So,
Democrats.
So anyone who is out here in these streets trying to live their lives and they can't because they're not making the finances that they're supposed to, that they're thinking about their kids in a way that we shouldn't have to even worry about, if they're thinking about how they're going to pay for this surgery or whatever it means, if they can't afford to go, like, having these two people in office is really not going to do much for people if they're really struggling. So it doesn't, like, the idea of having Trump in office does not scare me.
That means nothing now. Like, if you support third party, you're going to give it Trump. Okay, blame me. I want you to reflect on the fact that you lost enough votes to get Trump elected. I want to be part of the equation. Blame me, right?
And then blame us, and then we can tell you why.
Right. Hey, there's an article, I just pulled it up, from 2016, less than 2 weeks after Trump was elected. In the New York Times, paper of record, liberals who like the New York Times, it's titled, "Many in Milwaukee Neighborhood Didn't Vote and Don't Regret It."
Yeah.
The Milwaukee neighborhood they visited was a mostly black neighborhood. Where did they go? A barber shop. And they interviewed men in the barbershop. Granted, it was a small sample of people, but they just walked up. So I'm just going to read a little bit of it for those that...
I remember that.
Read this article. One of them said, they admitted they talked about, oh no, Trump is president. And one guy called him a literal gangster. And then he says, they admitted that they could not complain too much. Only a couple of them voted, but there were no regrets. Quote, says a man named Mr. Fleming, "I don't feel bad about not voting. Milwaukee is tired. Both of them were terrible. They never do anything for us anyway."
Yes.
So if people think it's just RBN or crazy Professor Zenkus or Cornell West being pie in the sky, no, it's real people who know our lives are not materially better. I will say at the state level, Republicans especially, well, not only down south, some in Midwest, are doing some really, going back to the queer community, some really dangerous things. But Colin's point is not lost on me and sure our audience, which is that why do you think these demagogues get traction? If you give people health care, if you give people, good paying jobs and job security, if you make them feel that they have some hope that their lives will be good and continue to be better, they're less likely to just hate their neighbor for no reason. Demagogues get traction. Chris Hedges articulated this years ago. He predicted Trump. They get traction, these demagogues, because our party that's supposed to be the opposition party refuses to do the work of the middle, the working class, and those in the middle class really are in the working class. They just don't want to admit it. And so it does concern me, just what we've been articulating here. No $15 wage, no eviction moratorium, no Medicare for all, not even the stupid public option, which wouldn't work, by the way. But still, it would have been something. We can go down the list. The military budget keeps going up. ICE budget goes up. CBP, Citizens Border Patrol, goes up. DHS goes up. $37 billion more for police. Qualified immunity has not been struck down. Cop City is happening in Atlanta, a city run by Democrats. And on and on. Eric Adams, a Democrat who has been a disaster in New York, the war against the homeless on the East Coast and the West Coast, no federal housing program. We could go down the list of all the things they could have done and should have done, trillions of dollars lost in the military that nobody can account for. And yet, none of these things. You brought up the tax credit. I kept hearing these liberals brag on and on. Biden cut child poverty in half. First of all, it was about 40%, which is, by the way, nothing to shake a stick at. And it had a time limit. It was like less than 9 months that people got this tax credit.
Yeah.
What it proved was that if you give cash relief to poor people, it instantly improves their lives. And by the way, and I will just say this, I don't get in those matches. Like I do watch Breaking Points. I get information. There are things I don't like that Crystal and Sagar say, but sometimes they bring up really good points about the working class. And I will say this, they've been good, solid on those working class issues. They showed polling, deep polling, looking at the crosstabs that showed when they instituted the child tax credit, support for the Democrats went up in the lowest 20% economically. And when it expired, it went right down. What? How is this not obvious? So I start to think it's something more sinister. I think even Democrats don't want us to believe that government can make our lives better. I think they don't want us to get used to the fact that it is completely possible to fix most of our problems. They don't want us to believe that can happen. They don't want us to believe in what could be possible. What RFK said, don't imagine what is and ask why. Think about what is and ask why. Think about what isn't and ask why not. Great words, great rhetoric. I don't know if he would have done anything about it. They don't want us to imagine why not. They want us to just be like, this is all we're going to do. And I think that's a big deal because sometime 20, 30, 40 years from now, someone's going to look back at this moment and at what we did or didn't do. And I think it's going to determine a trajectory for our nation and for the globe. And that last thing, I always do that. The last thing I want to say about this is Cornell West is the only candidate talking about the global working class and how we are all connected. I know that we all have more in common with workers in Iran, in Russia, in China, in Sweden, in Botswana, than we do with millionaires, billionaires, or the top 20% professional class in this country. We need a global movement. I don't know. So that's the only thing that's making me feel hopeful right now is these.
Cornel West. And I have to agree. Cornel West is a pretty hopeful sort of candidate. And I do see a lot of us on the further left is kind of invigorated with his candidacy.